Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following content is presented for educational and entertainment purposes only. This represents a verbatim federal courtroom testimony, as reported by Inner City Press during the ongoing Sean Diddy Combs trial proceedings. If you believe that accountability must reach every level of criminal enterprise regardless of family connections, please support our comprehensive coverage by subscribing to our channel and engaging with this content. To ensure these critical developments receive the attention they deserve, nobody anticipated that Janice Combs would enter the federal courthouse that morning carrying documents that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of her son's criminal trial. The courtroom atmosphere was already charged with tension from weeks of devastating testimony from multiple witnesses. However, the moment Sean Combs' own mother approached the witness stand, the entire proceeding shifted into unprecedented territory described as extraordinary in federal criminal proceedings. Until that moment, Janice Combs had been a steadfast supporter of her son throughout his legal challenges. She had attended court sessions, regularly maintained public statements defending his character, and utilized her considerable influence within entertainment industry circles to support his defense efforts. However, something had fundamentally changed in her perspective on the evidence presented during the trial. Perhaps it was the systematic nature of the testimony from multiple victims. Perhaps it was the overwhelming documentary evidence that had been presented by federal prosecutors. Perhaps it was a realization that maternal loyalty could not justify enabling continued criminal behavior that had harmed numerous innocent individuals. She was not approaching the witness stand as Janice Combs, a supportive mother. She was not there as the entertainment industry matriarch who had helped build a business empire. She was present as a witness who possessed critical information about the financial and enterprise to function effectively for multiple decades. Her decision to testify represented a profound moral reckoning that prioritized justice and accountability over family loyalty and personal considerations. The implications of her testimony extended far beyond the immediate impact on Sean Combs' defense strategy. Janice Combs possessed intimate knowledge of business operations, financial arrangements, and organizational structures that had supported what federal prosecutors characterized as a comprehensive criminal enterprise. Her cooperation with federal law enforcement represented a fundamental breach in the protective barriers that had previously shielded the most, as observers recognized that they were witnessing a moment that would likely be remembered as decisive in federal prosecution efforts against sophisticated criminal enterprises operating within legitimate business structures. The emotional and strategic implications of a mother testifying against her son in federal criminal proceedings created unprecedented dynamics that challenged conventional understanding of family loyalty, and legal accountability appeared visibly shaken as his mother approached the witness stand. His composed demeanor, which had been maintained throughout weeks of challenging testimony, began showing signs of significant strain as he confronted the reality that his most fundamental support system was about to provide evidence that could ensure his conviction and lengthy federal imprisonment regardless of their resources or legal representation. The federal courthouse morning session began with the typical procedural elements that had characterized weeks of complex testimony in the Sean Combs criminal trial. Legal teams engaged in their customary pre-session consultations, while media representatives prepared their equipment for another day of comprehensive coverage. Professionals throughout the duration of the trial. However, the atmosphere shifted dramatically when court officers announced that Janice Combs had arrived and requested permission to address the court regarding her potential testimony. The unexpected nature of her appearance created immediate confusion among legal teams. Federal prosecutors appeared surprised but prepared to accommodate her request, while defense attorneys engaged in urgent consultations about the implications of her potential testimony. Sean Combs' reaction to his mother's unexpected appearance was immediately apparent to courtroom observers. His previously maintained composure began showing visible signs of strain as he realized that the family support system he had relied upon throughout his legal challenges was potentially about to be compromised. As legal team surrounded him, Combs herself appeared remarkably composed despite the extraordinary nature of her decision to testify in federal criminal proceedings against her son. Her demeanor suggested extensive preparation and careful consideration of the moral and legal implications of her decision. She carried herself with a dignity appropriate for someone making one of the most difficult decisions possible for any parent, but her resolve appeared unshakable despite the Obvious emotional challenges involved court artists worked frantically to capture the unprecedented family dynamics that were unfolding in federal criminal proceedings. Legal experts present in the courtroom recognized immediately that they were witnessing testimony that would likely establish precedents for how family members might be utilized as witnesses in complex criminal enterprise prosecutions. Federal prosecutors approached this unexpected family dynamics. Their questions were carefully structured to elicit relevant information while respecting the extraordinary emotional circumstances that surrounded maternal testimony. In criminal proceedings, the prosecution team appeared to recognize that Janice Combs' testimony could provide crucial insights into organizational structures and operational methods that had previously been difficult to establish through external witnesses of defense teams. Response revealed their complete lack of preparation for this development. Their strategy had apparently assumed continued family support and had not anticipated the possibility that close family members might cooperate with federal prosecution efforts. Time or advance notice of the testimony scope. The judge maintained strict procedural control, acknowledging the extraordinary nature of the family dynamics involved in the proceedings. Judicial management of maternal testimony in criminal proceedings requires careful balance between ensuring comprehensive evidence presentation and maintaining appropriate sensitivity to family relationships. The court's approach demonstrated recognition that this testimony represented unprecedented circumstances that required flexible application of standard procedural guidelines. Court observers noted that the emotional atmosphere in the courtroom had reached levels that exceeded even the most challenging previous testimony sessions. A combination of family betrayal, criminal accountability, and federal prosecution created psychological dynamics that affected not only the immediate participants, but also legal professionals, media representatives, and public observers who recognized the historical significance of the proceedings. The systematic nature of federal prosecution efforts against Sean Combs had apparently convinced his mother that family loyalty could not justify continued support for criminal behavior that harmed numerous innocent individuals. Her decision to testify represented moral calculation that prioritized justice and accountability over traditional family obligations and personal. Combs began her testimony by providing the federal court with comprehensive background information about her role in the business empire that her son had constructed over multiple decades. Her perspective offered unique insights into the evolution of legitimate business operations into what federal prosecutors characterized as sophisticated criminal enterprise structures. Her testimony revealed that she had maintained significant involvement in business decisions and organizational management throughout the development of Sean Combs' entertainment industry empire. According to Janice Combs' testimony, her involvement in her son's business operations began during the early stages of his career development, when legitimate entertainment industry activities required family support and financial assistance. She explained that her initial role had been limited to traditional family business support functions, including administrative assistance, financial management guidance, and networking within entertainment industry circles where her personal relationships could facilitate business development opportunities. However, Janice testified that over time her role had evolved to encompass more sophisticated business functions as the organization expanded and developed increasingly complex operational structures. She explained that her involvement had gradually extended to financial oversight, responsibilities, personnel management decisions, and strategic planning activities that gave her comprehensive understanding of organizational operations and business methodologies. But the testimony revealed that Janice Combs had initially viewed the increasingly sophisticated business operations as natural evolution of successful entertainment industry enterprise development. She explained that the complexity of financial arrangements, the extensive personnel requirements, and the sophisticated operational structures had seemed consistent with the scale and scope of legitimate business operations in the entertainment industry. According to her testimony, her growing concerns about certain business practices had developed gradually as she observed activities and decisions that seemed inconsistent with legitimate business operations. She described witnessing personnel decisions that appear to prioritize loyalty and compliance over professional qualifications, financial arrangements that seemed designed to obscure rather than facilitate legitimate business functions, and operational procedures that emphasize secrecy and control rather than transparency and efficiency. Janice testified that her attempts to raise concerns about these business practices had been consistently dismissed or redirected by her son and other organizational leadership. She explained that her questions about specific financial arrangements, personnel policies, and operational procedures had been characterized as misunderstanding of complex business requirements rather than legitimate concerns about potentially problematic activities. A testimony revealed that Janice Combs had gradually realized that her continued involvement in business operations was enabling activities that she found morally unacceptable. She described a gradual awakening to the systematic nature of organizational activities that appeared designed to facilitate control and manipulation rather than legitimate business functions. Her growing understanding of these systematic patterns had created an internal conflict between family loyalty and moral responsibility. According to Janice's testimony, specific incidents had occurred that forced her to confront the criminal nature of certain organizational activities. She described witnessing personnel being instructed to engage in activities that appeared illegal, observing financial transactions that seemed designed to facilitate criminal behavior, and becoming aware of systematic documentation that suggested criminal enterprise operations rather than legitimate business activities. Janice explained that her decision to begin documenting her observations had been motivated by her realization that family relationship could not justify continued enablement of criminal behavior. She testified that she had systematically preserved records, communications, and documentation that demonstrated the evolution of legitimate business operations into criminal enterprise activities. This documentation had been maintained despite significant personal risk and emotional challenges associated with gathering evidence against her own son. The testimony revealed that Janice Combs had attempted multiple times to convince her son to modify business practices that she believed were criminal in nature. She described difficult conversations in which she had expressed concerns about legal risks, moral implications, and potential consequences for family members and business associates who might be affected by criminal prosecution efforts. These conversations had apparently been unsuccessful in modifying organizational behavior or operational procedures. According to her testimony, Janice had gradually realized that individual family intervention was insufficient to address systematic criminal behavior that had become embedded in organizational culture and operational procedures. She explained that the sophisticated nature of the criminal enterprise required systematic law enforcement intervention and comprehensive legal accountability, rather than internal family pressure or moral persuasion. Janice testified that the decision to cooperate with federal law enforcement had been motivated by her understanding that continued silence would make her complicit in ongoing criminal behavior that was harming innocent individuals. She explained that maternal loyalty could not justify enabling systematic victimization of vulnerable people, particularly when she possessed information that could help prevent future criminal activity and ensure accountability for past criminal behavior. The testimony revealed that Janice Combs had maintained extensive documentation of business operations, financial arrangements, and organizational activities throughout her involvement in the enterprise's documentation included financial records, communications, operational procedures, and personnel information that provided comprehensive evidence of criminal enterprise operations and individual criminal activities. According to her testimony, Janice had provided this documentation to federal investigators after careful consideration of the moral and legal implications of her cooperation with law enforcement efforts. She explained that her decision had been influenced by the testimony of victims who had been harmed by the criminal enterprise and by her realization that her continued silence was enabling ongoing criminal behavior. Janice concluded this section of her testimony by explaining that her cooperation with federal prosecution efforts represented a moral decision that prioritized justice and accountability over family loyalty and personal consideration. She testified that maternal love required her to ensure that her son faced appropriate consequences for criminal behavior rather than continued